This is My Crazy, My Rules, where the only crazy thing is my fondness for reading your letters and seeing a piece of your thoughts. I'm your host, Benn Shannon, so grab a coffee, settle in, and let's listen to this next letter together, because that's what we do here. We share our crazy one story at a time. To all the new listeners, I want to say welcome, and to those that have been here before, welcome back. I guess last week's episode really touched a lot of the listeners in the fields. I've received quite a bit of great feedback. Quite a few people, thank you, telling me that it was my best episode yet. And again, I say thank you for listening and thank you for the feedback. And this week's episode, I'm going to do more of the same. I'm not going to do the same topic, but the talking is going to be more or less about someone's letter and more about what that letter actually means and more about that topic. And like last week, I'm only going to be using my first recording. I am really seeing how trying to record over and over again to get it perfect is not as important as trying to get the actual emotion over that I feel the first time I talk about it. Because I've seen that when I try to do it over and over and over again and get it perfect, it may sound perfect, but it no longer has any emotion to it at all. I'm going to ask you right now for your forgiveness for every time I may say or so or clear my throat or take a drink. I want you to realize I'm trying to get the thought out more than I'm trying to get the podcast to sound perfectly. And before I even begin today's episode, I'm going to share with you something I'm super excited about. I have a very good friend. Actually, he's a very good family friend, and he is opening a podcast studio right here in McKinney, Texas, and that's where I'm located. And he has invited me to bring my podcast to his studio and to broadcast from there, not only audio, but video as well, or visual. And so many people have told me I have a face for radio. So I'm kind of leery about doing this. We're going to see if I have a face for audio and visual. And as soon as it's officially opened, I'm going to share all the information about it. But I will share this part now. I have seen it and it is amazing. So stay tuned for the audio visual, My Crazy, My Rules, coming to you soon. Now, getting to the topic that I'm sharing today, it's from a friend of mine in New Hampshire. Mark has sent in things before, and I have read a letter from him, and it was about how he shared the same feelings I had when my mother passed away, when his mother passed away. And Mark and I have been friends for, since I was 11 or 12, and I'll be 64 this month. So that tells you it's been a long time. And the thing about what he sent me, and I will tell you, when he sent it to me, he said, Ben, this is really, really important. And I think it's something that you should do a podcast about. And I read it and I realized I had at least 11 other people in the last year or so send me the same thing he did. But since he sent it directly to me and not through a post or something of that nature, I actually saw it and read it. So thank you, Mark, for sending this to me. And as you requested, I'm doing a podcast about it. And the person Mark was listening to is a gentleman whose name is Simon Sinek. I believe that's how it pronounces his last name. And Mr. Sinek is known as the unshakable optimist. Now, if you Google his name, you're going to find all his wonderful sites, and he has a bunch. And what he was saying in this one that really grabbed Mark, because Mark knows how I feel about these things, is something he called the 8-minute rule, or the 8-minute question, maybe a better way to explain it. And I'm going to go into that in just a minute. But the one thing I do want you to fall back on is the way it was presented to me, because this person knows how much emotion I put into this and how strongly I feel about trying to help people. And that's what this podcast has been about since the very, very first time I set it out. It's giving people that need a way to express themselves or need somebody to hear them, a way for them to do it. And a lot of you know, I am very much a person that's trying to help prevent or stop suicide. I have myself dealt with that fight personally when I also was in the military and as a medic. I dealt with seeing it quite a bit. In the fire department, I had been on way too many calls dealing with suicides, some of them unfortunately successful. The other thing is in the 911 system, I took those type of calls and they were extremely emotional to say the very least. So that is why he felt it was so important to send this to me now. And what struck me is it's called the 8-minute rule. And I got to thinking about that. And the thing that caught me first was it was a time. It puts actual 8 minutes is what it's about. And I have gone through in my life many rules, and I'm finding out more and more as I get older, there's a lot of rules that deal with time and how a certain amount of time can help you. And it started when, hey, we were all kids. We were all little kids. You remember mom or dad or grandma, grandpa saying, don't touch that. It's hot. Or watch out. You will fall and break your neck. That was my mom's favorite. Look both ways when you cross the street. Then as you get older and you start driving, don't go immediately on a green light. Look both ways. Make sure there's not traffic that's trying to blow through the red light. Stay away from the car directly in front of you. And then as I got into the fire department, we talked about scene safety, and that's where we really started talking about times. Now, when we went back into the watch out and fall, you break your neck, things like that, I developed something that I called the 1-second rule. And I taught it to my children. I taught it to anybody I had a class with, where I taught CPR and first aid, where I taught firefighters, where I taught EMS personnel. I was an EMS supervisor for a private ambulance company, Maryland, D.C., Virginia. Anyone I come in contact with that I am teaching anything, I teach them the 1-second rule because it's so important. And when that 1-second rule, what that 1-second rule means is whatever you do right now, what is going to happen in the next 1 second? And dealing with a strictly scene safety, it means things like when I get out of my fire engine or I get out of my ambulance and I'm so totally blown away about what's going on in front of me, I stop thinking about myself. So take 1 second, one quick second to look around and make sure whatever you do next is absolutely safe. And it's not just for people in fire or first responders. It means things like when you're backing up out of your driveway and you're in such a hurry for that day, still take that 1 second to look around before you back up. Make sure there's no children behind you. Make sure there's nothing behind your car. Everything that I've ever been on has that deals with this type of situation is always the people felt they were too rushed to take 1 second to look around them. So that's what the 1-second rule is about. And then later on, I learned about hugs. And did you know there's actually time restraints? Not time restraints, but what makes a hug a good hug or a great hug? And what I found out is a good hug will last about 6 seconds, but a great hug takes 20 seconds. And this is kind of wild. And the reason I'm bringing this one up is, hey, we're talking about comforting people. And as we get into the 8-minute rule, we're going to talk about that more. But right now, for a hug to actually be beneficial, it needs to be at least 20 seconds long for what we call the optimal benefits. It allows release of oxytocin, which is better known as the love hormone. This extended hug can lower stress. It can reduce anxiety. It promotes feelings of calmness and emotional connection by triggering the pressure sensors in the skin. So how long does a hug need to last? In 6 seconds, the brain will begin to release serotonin and oxytocin. In 20 seconds, the therapeutic effect is achieved. You have a strong release of oxytocin and other feel-good chemicals like serotonin and dopamine, and this reduces the stress and increases the feeling of well-being. And so as I went into this and I actually investigated, if you can investigate a hug, I investigated what happens in 20 seconds. And in a 20-second hug, you're going to feel the physical act that hugging slows your heart rate and it lowers your blood pressure and it reduces, we were talking about the good hormones, it reduces the production of the stress hormone that's cortisol. It releases oxytocin, it promotes trust, emotional closeness, and it creates a stronger bond between individuals. And hugs can also boost the immune system and reduce cravings for things like drugs and sugar. So every time I want something sweet, I tell my wife she needs to give me a hug. And the other thing that I did learn about hugs, and this was just recently to where it really drove it home, you heard the podcast where I talked about my mom and her passing, and one of the things I did is I had to give I didn't have to. Let's stop that. I gave a eulogy over my mom, and it was very emotional for me. And after the eulogy was over, there was a rabbi that was up on the stage with me. And as I was walking off, she moved over to give me a hug. And I thought that was nice. And I went over to give her a quick hug and get moving on. But she didn't let me go. I was all for the quick hug. I need to get out of here. She held me, and she held me for well over 20 seconds. And I'm going to tell you, honestly, as we got, I can't tell you how long into the hug I've started feeling it, but as she held on to me, I felt more calm. I felt that there was a bit of a more peace. And even at that point, she still held me for a bit longer and then let me go. And I will tell you, that was probably one of the best emotional hugs from non-family that I have ever received in my life. So, enough about hugs. Then we got into emergency medicine and survival training and things of that nature. And there's a billion key timeframes we talk about. We talk about some for EMS, emergency medical. And when we talk about immediate EMS, we have how important time is to, especially it's critical to survival. We have something called the 90-second rule. And this is kind of like the 1 second rule, but 90 seconds more, 89 seconds more. The first 90 seconds, the first minute and a half after the incident, not the actual, but after the person arrives at the incident, is the most critical for both the victim and the responder. This is where the responder takes a moment or 90 seconds and acknowledges their own stress. They take a breath. They assess what's going on around them. And this is how they prevent themselves from becoming another casualty, and they can take care of the problem at hand. Then we have something called the golden minute and then the platinum 10 minutes. And the golden minute refers to the first 60 seconds. This is the time to assess the situation and begin your basic interventions like calling for help and starting CPR if needed. And then the platinum 10 minutes is talking about how everything needs to actually come into being in that 10 minutes. This is following the injury. It's pivotal. So then we have, following the golden minute, the platinum 10 minutes, we have the golden hour. And this is referring to the 60 minutes after a traumatic injury. It's getting the person, the victim, to the correct medical center that can help them. It doesn't mean necessarily getting them to the closest doc in a box. It means getting them out to the people that are going to be able to help them within that first 60 minutes. And then you have heart attack and stroke times and all those type of things and acronyms everywhere. And then after EMS, we have things, time limits dealing with a major disaster, and we deal with the rules of threes here. You have 3 minutes without air. If you don't address the airway obstructions, it's immediate life or death after 3 minutes. 3 hours without shelter, again, a 3. In extreme weather, being without shelter for 3 hours can be life-threatening. 3 days without water, we know 3 days, it's critical to survival. 3 weeks without food. Your body's not going to go much longer than 3 weeks without food. The 72-hour rule, getting away from the threes for a minute. We had 3 minutes, 3 hours, 3 days, 3 weeks. Then you have the 72-hour rule, which is very important. Every home should have enough basic supplies to last them for 72 hours in an emergency like a tornado, a hurricane, a snowstorm, major flooding that we've seen. So everybody should have at least 72 hours of supplies that they can be self-sufficient for that long without anybody else being there to help them. So we have all those times. And now we get to the one that this podcast is all about, today's episode is all about, and that's the 8-minute rule. And this one is, to me, I would say after the 1 second rule, this is the one that if you're going to help somebody else with an emotional or psychological crisis, this is the one that's going to mean the most. And the question the gentleman asked himself, or the question that he was asked was, hey, do you have a minute to talk? And when he was asked this by a friend, he replied, no, I'm a little busy right now. I'm trying to get this work done and everything else. Can it wait till later? And the person on the other end of the phone said, yeah, absolutely. You can wait till later. And hung up. And that was the end of the conversation. Then he was talking to her 3 or 4 days later, and she was explaining to him this massive problem she was having in her life. And it had been going on for about a week. And it had gotten to the point where she absolutely did not know what to do. And he told her, he said, call me. Let me know you're having these problems, and I will absolutely help you. And she said, I did, but you didn't have time. And he said, when did you call me? I would have stopped what I was doing and helped you. And she said, well, I called you about 3 days ago. And I asked you if you had a minute, and you said no. And he goes, I had no idea. And as he got to thinking about it and everything that he knows that if you're going to help somebody through an emotional crisis or a psychological crisis, it takes about 8 minutes. That's in the time it's going to take you to hear what's happening, understand what's happening, and maybe come up with some sort of plan, or at least let the person know that, hey, we can get through this together. So what he did is he said, let's do this. Let's go ahead and create a code that if either one of us ever needs help, we just ask this code and we'll know the other person needs help. So they came up with, do you have 8 minutes? Or do you have 8 minutes to talk? And what that means is if I'm having a crisis and I call you and I ask, do you have 8 minutes to talk? You immediately know I'm having a crisis. And if you're having a crisis or anyone is having a crisis and they call me and they say, do you have 8 minutes to talk? My response is always going to be yes. I have 8 minutes. I mean, I have more than 8 minutes. Let's be real. I spend 10 times that on Facebook and Instagram and everything else every day. And I know you do too. I might spend more than that perusing my phone when I'm otherwise occupied, we'll say. So I have absolutely 8 minutes to help someone. And I will never say no. When somebody says, do you have 8 minutes to talk? My immediate answer, I don't care what I'm doing. I can leave a meeting for 8 minutes. I'll bet you the President of the United States can leave a meeting for 8 minutes. Everybody has 8 minutes. And let's not get into the president. Let's not get into politics. Come on. I know what you're thinking as soon as I said that. But we all have 8 minutes to put what we're doing aside and spend it talking with a friend. And how many times when you think back right now has somebody said, do you have a minute? And you had said no, and then you found out later on they really needed more than just 1 minute. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do right now. I have just shared this code with you. It took a while to lead up to it, I know. But I have shared this code with you, and what I would like you to do is share this code with 8 other people. It's an 8-minute code. Let's share it with 8 people. And starting right now, and I'm going to this is pre-recorded, so I'm going to say, since it comes out on Monday, starting at 12:01 a.m. on Monday morning, we are going to share, everybody's going to come to this agreement to say, today, I am going to share the 8-minute rule with 8 people. And I'm going to tell these 8 people, here's my 8-minute rule. If you ever need help, you can call me and say, do you have 8 minutes to talk? And I will absolutely positively be there for you. And please, if I ever ask you the same thing, please say yes, because I'm needing your help. And if we all share that with 8 other people, the amount of people that will understand when one of their friends, one of their associates, one of their family members is having an emergency that they really need to talk to you, it's going to be different than saying, do you have a minute? Do you have 8 minutes to talk? And I will always respond, yes. Like I said, everyone has 8 minutes. Thank you. I can't tell you how much I really appreciate the listeners I have and the things that they have sent to me stating what they have done, what they have heard, what they have learned. And I especially hope that you took something away from today's episode. And thank you for listening to another episode of My Crazy, My Rules, where no one's normal. And here, that's something we celebrate. If you've got a story to share, a comment to make on this week's letter, or just something you need to say, email me at letters@mycrazymyrules.com. That's letters@mycrazymyrules.com. You can be anonymous or not. That's your choice. And for those of you that just tuned in today and you didn't hear one of our normal podcasts, what we really like to do is hear from you. We like to hear the stories of something that either you overcame in your life or something that changed your life, whether it made it better or worse, and how you dealt with this. And then we have people that will write in or call in or talk about the same thing, so you feel support. And the biggest thing is if you feel that you need help, if you feel confused, you can't figure things out for yourself and you need to talk to someone, please seek help now. Don't wait. You can contact the National Suicide Hotline by calling 988. You can text them by sending a text to 741-741 and ask for help. You can also chat with them online by emailing them at 988lifeline.org. They are there to help you. That's their job. If you like today's episode, please make sure to subscribe, share the show with your friends, family, or anyone who needs to know that they're not alone. I am still striving towards my first 100 followers. I'm getting really close, and I appreciate that. Help me get over that first goal of 100 followers by sharing, by liking, and just letting everybody know how great of a podcast this is. So until next time, it's my crazy, my rules. What's yours?